So, have you ever felt that nagging, that almost irresistible urge to upgrade your perfectly functional phone or your laptop, your car even?
Oh, absolutely. Even when the new model offers only like really minor differences, maybe just cosmetic stuff.
It's a familiar feeling, isn't it? You're
Yeah.
perfectly happy with what you have, and then bam,
Yeah.
a new version pops up.
And suddenly yours feels, well, less. It's almost like your brain's been like rewired somehow to immediately seek out the next shiny thing.
Yeah, rewired is a good word for it. But
Uh,
then conversely, you've probably noticed how some cherished items just last.
Definitely. Like an old painting that's been on your wall for ages, or maybe a vintage piece of furniture, passed
Or a
down.
classic book you keep going back to again and again.
Yeah.
They never seem to lose their appeal, do they?
No, not at all. In fact, they often get richer with age somehow. They don't need any upgrade whatsoever. They just are.
They endure. And we cherish them for exactly that reason, I think.
Right.
So it's this fascinating human tendency, this uh, really inconsistent way we perceive value and durability and novelty, especially in a world that's just completely obsessed with the new.
That's what we're getting into today, isn't it? This deep dive.
Exactly. Our mission today is to really unpack what drives this constant, sometimes, frankly, relentless pursuit of upgrades
We'll explore how design shapes, our daily lives, even our cities in pretty profound ways.
and uncover some surprising insights into what kind of knowledge actually endures, what sticks around across generations.
And ultimately, I hope, discover the sort of quiet, deep wisdom in things that simply last.
So prepare to challenge some assumptions, maybe find a few of those aha moments that kind of shift your perspective.
Yeah, and hopefully leave with a fresh new lens to view the objects, the ideas, even the very fabric of your world.
We're going to explore why we're often caught in this endless chase for the next best thing.
And maybe more importantly, why sometimes the old thing, the enduring thing, is actually the best thing, not just good enough, but actually better.
Okay, let's really try and unpack this then. Our journey starts on what we're calling the treadmill of modernity.
Ooh, I like that. The treadmill of modernity.
Yeah. And this isn't just about, buying stuff. It's a deep dive into why we just can't seem to stop upgrading, particularly when it comes to technology.
Right. And at the heart of this, you've got these two concepts that are really intertwined: neuromania and the treadmill effect.
Neuromania, explain that one a bit.
Well, neuromania basically is this almost insatiable obsession with the new. It's that immediate, almost visceral pull towards anything fresh, novel, shiny.
Like a magpie instinct almost.
Sort of. It's the brain's reward system just lighting up when it sees innovation, even if that innovation is tiny, incremental.
Okay, so that's the pull. And the treadmill effect.
Well, that's what happens after you give in, after you acquire that new thing. You get that initial, maybe exhilarating boost of satisfaction, right? That dopamine hit.
Yeah, the unboxing high.
Exactly. But that sensation, it fades really rapidly. Your brain just adapts incredibly quickly to the new normal.
And you're left feeling pretty much how you were before, maybe even a bit emptier.
That's it. And you find yourself rapidly desiring the next new version. It's this continuous, often really unsatisfying search for version 2.0, 3.0, whatever's next.
A cycle that promises ultimate satisfaction, but rarely delivers it in any lasting way.
Precisely. It keeps you running on the treadmill.
And you see this absolutely everywhere, don't you? It feels almost inescapable sometimes. Like, think about cars.
Hmm.
You might be driving your perfectly functional, maybe 2-year-old Japanese sedan down the road, feeling pretty good about it, content.
Yeah, solid choice, reliable.
Then suddenly, a car of the exact same make overtakes you, but it's the brand new, just released version.
Ah, right. And instantly, your car, which felt perfectly fine just moments ago,
Now feels markedly inferior. It's this almost instantaneous shift in how you perceive it.
and it's often kicked off by such seemingly minor things, right? Mostly cosmetic variations, usually.
Exactly. The new one might have a slightly higher bumper, maybe wider taillights, little tweaks.
There might be some subtle, hidden technical improvements, but often they represent less than, I don't know, a few percentage points in actual functional change.
But the emotional impact is huge, totally disproportionate. That upgrade, just feeling the urge to upgrade, let alone doing it.
It can cost you a significant chunk of a new vehicle's price, maybe a third, for changes that, objectively speaking, aren't really fundamentally changing the car's performance or utility in a big way.
The inferiority is all in your head, really,
Yeah.
influenced purely by seeing the newer one.
It really is. And it's even more pronounced, maybe even more brutal with personal
Oh,
computers.
definitely. The recovery value of an old car, even just a couple of years old, is still pretty substantial. There's a used market, it has tangible
But
worth,
an old computer, its value plummets. It's practically negligible after a short time.
so you just bought a new Apple Mac, maybe. You're thrilled with it, it's sleek, it's fast. A week later, you're on a plane.
Uh-huh. And the person next to you pulls out what they just bought, the even newer version.
Right. Looks kind of like yours, family resemblance, but suddenly your machine, the
Yeah.
one that brought you so much joy just a few days ago.
Feels thicker somehow.
Oof.
The screen seems much less elegant. All that excitement and satisfaction you had for your new computer just vanishes.
Poof. Gone.
And it's the same rapid obsolescence, the same relentless churn with cell phones, isn't it? Models that were considered the absolute height of small and sleek just a few years back.
Are now looked down on, almost laughed at, as older, larger models. Clunky.
We see this pattern again and again across so many tech-driven things: skis, cars, computers, software, you name it.
It really highlights our deep-seated, almost automatic tendency to notice the differences between versions, however tiny they are.
Rather than focusing on the commonalities, the fundamental usefulness that hasn't really changed much.
And this constant focus on minor variations, often pumped up by marketing and just the appeal of newness, is exactly what leads to this widespread dissatisfaction with some items and some class of goods.
It's a powerful effect. And it's not just a casual observation, is it? This treadmill effect has been seriously studied.
Right. In psychology.
Yep.
Daniel Kahneman and his colleagues did a lot of work on what they call hedonic states, basically,
Mm.
our levels of happiness and satisfaction.
And what they found really backs this up. People, after getting a new item, they feel that initial boost of satisfaction, that dopamine hit we talked about.
Yeah.
But then, and this is the crucial part, they rapidly revert to their baseline of well-being.
So when you upgrade your tech, you get that quick, fleeting boost, that immediate thrill from the changes in technology.
But your brain is just incredibly adaptable. You get used to it super fast. It becomes your new normal, your new baseline.
And once it's normal, once that initial novelty wears off,
Your brain, which is basically wired for stimulation and reward, starts hunting for the new thing all over again.
this reverting to baseline, and maybe even shifting that baseline higher each time.
That's exactly why the cycle of dissatisfaction just keeps going, seemingly without end. It's a fundamental part of our psychology interacting with really rapid technological change.
Creating this endless feedback loop.
Yeah.
Desire, fleeting satisfaction, desire again.
Yep. But here's where it gets really interesting, because as you hinted earlier, this doesn't happen with everything.
Right. It seems we don't experience this treadmill effect universally. There's a pretty clear and, I think, profound distinction our minds make
Between what?
between items with an on-off switch, basically technology, and things like classic art or old furniture.
Ah, okay. Yeah.
Imagine for a second you've got an oil painting and a flat-screen TV in the same room.
Okay. The oil painting might be, say, a beautiful imitation of a classic Flemish scene, maybe painted a century ago.
Hmm.
Dark, ominous skies, majestic trees, a calm, kind of evocative rural scene.
You are, as our source puts it, quite certain that you won't be eager or even remotely tempted to upgrade that painting in the next few years.
Mm-hmm.
Or ever, probably.
No, it just is. Its value isn't tied to novelty or the latest tech specs.
But that flat-screen TV, within a few years, maybe 5, maybe less.
Oh yeah, it'll almost certainly soon be donated to the local chapter of some kidney foundation to make way for a minor upgrade.
It's that constant cycle. iPhone 16 to 17, 17 to 18. But the painting, it's immune.
Totally immune. Its value lies in its inherent aesthetic quality, its history maybe, not its functional novelty.
And it's not just paintings, is it? Think about old classical furniture like a solid oak desk that's seen generations of use. Or heritage items, family heirlooms.
Right, or even something like dishes. People often actively try to replicate 19th century dealer customs to find older, more authentic pieces. We seek out the old there.
These are areas where we just don't try to optimize matters or upgrade them to a newer version. In fact, their age, their history, their little imperfections often add to their value, their appeal.
Which leads us to a really key differentiator. Whatever has an on or off switch seems to fall into this category where we focus on variations with attendant pneumonia.
Yeah. And these items are often fragile
Mhm.
in a specific way. Maybe not that they break easily physically, but their perceived value is fragile. They don't have that redeeming anti-fragility.
They're almost designed in a way for built-in obsolescence, at least in our perception. But in stark contrast, what is artisanal has the love of the maker infused in it.
Ah, that's a lovely way to put it.
Artisans often dedicate themselves to their craft for, months before becoming comfortable with what they're creating. They pour skill, attention, time into every detail.
And that infusion of care, that timelessness.
That's precisely what causes few treadmill effects. It allows these items to have some anti-fragility. They're built to last, to deepen in character with use, to be loved for their enduring quality.
Like you said, a scratch on a new phone is a defect, a flaw.
But a scratch on an old wooden chest, that's part of its story. That's anti-fragility right there.
I can really relate to this personally. It's quite striking. I'm actually writing these very notes using a seasoned fountain pen. One of them is over 30 years old. It's crossed decades. And I don't fuss over its state, or small variations in the paper. In fact, I prefer Clairefontaine paper, which has hardly changed since I was a kid, maybe even degraded slightly.
You have no urge to upgrade the pen or the paper.
None whatsoever. But when it comes to actually transcribing my handwritten thoughts into electronic form, I instantly get this nagging worry about my Mac. Is it the absolute best, the fastest tool for the job?
Ah, the tech side kicks in.
Yeah. I heard the new version had a longer-lasting battery, and honestly, before I knew it, I was actually planning an impulse-buying episode, just for that minor perceived improvement.
It's that strange inconsistency, isn't it? That disconnect.
Totally baffling sometimes. Quiet contentment with the old, enduring tool for creation, but this restless dissatisfaction with the ever-evolving electronic device.
It truly is a paradox in how we perceive things. Consider that classic scenario. You're on a plane, maybe reading a physical book, and the businessman next to you is engrossed in his e-reader. He might glance at your book, maybe with a hint of, pity or something.
All right, like you're some kind of Luddite.
And he might start disparaging it, claiming his device is way more efficient. He'll boast about carrying a whole library, optimizing his time, all that digital convenience.
We've all heard that spiel.
But what he ignores, what he often can't even perceive, are the large differences of physical books. The subtle smell of the paper, the texture of the pages, the actual three-dimensional object.
Its unique color, its sheer physicality, and those countless hidden properties causing unexplained differences in enjoyment that a screen just can't replicate.
And here's the fascinating bit about that interaction. His focus will be on the commonalities between his e-reader and your book. Look how close this amazing device is to a real book.
Right, emphasizing the similarities.
But if you were comparing his specific e-reader model to another e-reader...
then it's all about the minute differences. This one's slightly lighter. That one has a better backlight.
Exactly. It's just like the example our source uses. When Lebanese people meet Syrians, they immediately focus on the tiny variations in their respective Levantine dialects, distinguishing themselves.
But when a Lebanese person meets, say, an Italian,
they instantly focus on the profound similarities that connect them. Mediterranean culture, food, whatever.
We apply this heuristic commonality versus difference in such a strangely inconsistent way, magnifying differences where they lead to dissatisfaction, ignoring them where they might lead to appreciation.
It's a compelling point, and it really shows how our focus shifts depending on the context. And speaking of personal transformations, I had my own journey with smartwatches.
Oh, really? You were caught in the upgrade cycle?
Oh, deeply. I was fully in that neuromania loop with them. I probably went through, 4 or 5, maybe even 6 different Apple Watch models.
Wow, constantly chasing the latest one.
Yeah, believing each one offered some significant leap forward, but then almost out of the blue, I just stopped.
What changed?
I just transitioned to wearing old classical wristwatches, mechanical ones, often with a simple leather strap. And the most striking thing, the need to upgrade just vanished.
You became immune to the tech churn. You didn't feel you needed this gadget strapped to you tracking everything.
Pretty much. And I started questioning the sheer amount of data these watches give us. Is it actually useful? More data caca local heart rate, as the source puts it.
Yeah. Does knowing your heart rate every second actually improve your well-being long-term?
Exactly. Beyond basic calorie counting or maybe getting notifications, I've never really seen long-term benefits for most people. It felt like the endless stream of data was just noise rather than being empowering.
So now you feel,
Now I feel more at peace with less technological grades. Apart from my essential work tools, which are just practical necessities, I don't upgrade that often anymore. I too was once a neuromaniac, getting a new phone every 6 months.
but that interest faded.
Completely dissipated. That restless craving for the new just went away. And this whole constant churn, this obsession with novelty, it isn't just about our personal gadgets, is it?
No, it's a much deeper mindset. And ironically, it can even impact something as seemingly solid and permanent as our buildings, our cities.
Which brings us perfectly to our second section, the enduring and the ephemeral in our built environment.
Because this pneumania, this obsession with the new and constant change, it hasn't stayed confined to our pockets or desks.
No, it has deeply infiltrated architecture, leading to what our source calls a kind of revolutionary warfare between architects.
A battle of styles and philosophies that's produced a compounded form of pneumania that really shapes the places we live.
And the fundamental problem with a lot of modernistic functional architecture is precisely its lack of, well, its lack of fragility in a certain sense. Or maybe its lack of anti-fragility. It's not fragile enough to break physically, so these buildings, once they're up, they just stand there, almost unchanging. And sometimes, as the source rather dramatically puts it, they stick out just to torture our consciousness.
We can't easily get rid of them. They don't just crumble away gracefully. They just persist.
Yeah.
Often as these stark monuments to design ideas that maybe don't age well or resonate with us over time.
They don't evolve gracefully, they just are fixed.
And a key way to understand this tension is through geometry, isn't it? Fractal versus Euclidean.
Exactly. Nature, as the brilliant mathematician Benoit Mandelbrot showed us, is profoundly fractal. It has this jaggedness and a form of self-similarity.
Like a tree.
Perfect example. A tree trunk branches into larger limbs that look like smaller trees, and those branch into smaller ones that still echo the pattern of the whole. Nature is inherently jagged and rich in detail.
Full of nested patterns, a method to its madness, you could say.
Right. And this incredible wealth of detail, this organic complexity, paradoxically, seems to lead to a feeling of inner peace in us. It feels natural, alive, harmonious.
Whereas much of modernism often aligns more with Euclidean geometry.
The smooth shapes, yeah. The perfect squares, circles, straight lines we learn about in school, they lose this layer of wealth. They strip away the intricate, multi-layered details our brains seem naturally attuned to.
So contemporary architecture, even when it tries to be playful, often feels smooth, completely stripped of fractal jaggedness.
Generally, yeah. Unwrinkled and feels dead, is how the source puts it. It lacks that organic, detailed complexity that we seem to find calming and beautiful, and instead it can feel, I don't know, sterile or unsettling.
You can see this distinction so clearly in places like Antoni Gaudi's buildings in Barcelona.
Oh, definitely. Built around the turn of the 20th century, they are absolutely inspired by nature and rich architecturally.
I remember visiting an apartment in one of his buildings, and it truly felt like an improvement cavern with rich, jagged details, the curves, the organic ironwork, everything.
That wealth of detail really does create a sense of inner peace, doesn't it? Yet, tragically, Gaudi's ideas, so rooted in natural forms.
They went nowhere, except in promoting modernism's unnatural and naive version of sleek, unadorned surfaces. His vision got sidelined.
It did. Later modernistic buildings became almost entirely smooth, stripped of that fractal richness, like they were trying to erase any hint of human touch or natural irregularity.
Personally, I find it so much more enjoyable writing when I'm facing trees, maybe a wild garden with ferns.
Where every leaf offers a fractal marvel.
Exactly. But conversely, those white walls with sharp corners and Euclidean angles and crisp shapes, they strain me. And once they're built, there's no way to get rid of them. You're just stuck with them.
It's striking how almost everything built since World War II has this unnatural smoothness. It really shows how pervasive that aesthetic became.
And for some people, these buildings caused and still cause really profound harm, both aesthetic and social. Think of Romania.
Ah, yes. The bitterness many Romanians still feel over Ceausescu's regime destroying traditional villages, replacing them with these stark, modern high-rises.
It's such a tragic example of how new mania and dictatorships are explosive combination.
The imposition of that top-down modern design, even when it's dressed up as progress or efficiency, can just obliterate centuries of organic beauty, community, cultural heritage. It leaves these deep scars.
And this ties directly into urban planning, doesn't it? Demonstrating that central property of the so-called top-down effect.
Absolutely. Top-down planning, where big decisions are imposed from above, is usually irreversible. Mistakes tend to stick because there's little room for adaptation or natural correction.
Whereas bottom-up planning is more gradual and incremental.
Right. Characterized by creation and destruction along the way that happens organically over time, it shows a kind of positive slope for the things that grow in a natural way.
Like Le Corbusier's famous idea of houses as machines for living, seemed rational, functional.
But as history showed us, France's housing projects, often designed with that very philosophy, frequently became machines for alienation, breeding isolation instead of community.
Which brings us to that epic standoff in urban history, Jane Jacobs versus Robert Moses in New York.
Oh, a classic battle. Jacobs took this truly heroic stance, a kind of political-style resistance against new mania in architecture and urban planning.
And she stood directly against the modernistic top-down vision championed by Robert Moses.
Moses was such a powerful figure, wanting to improve New York by raising tenements and installing large roads and highways. Some argue he committed a greater crime against natural order than even Haussmann did in 19th century Paris.
Haussmann, who created the grand boulevards, but also wiped out entire neighborhoods, sacrificing that organic growth for geometric order.
Exactly. Jacob saw the city completely differently, not as a machine to be engineered, but as an organism, a complex, living, evolving thing that should be devoted to pedestrians, fostering street life, spontaneous interaction.
While Moses saw it precisely as a machine to be improved upon, prioritizing cars and massive infrastructure.
The philosophies were just diametrically opposed, a real clash between organic complexity and rigid, centralized planning.
And Moses had huge plans, didn't he?
Yeah.
To demolish large parts of the West Village for highways.
He did. But thanks to Jacobs's petitions and unremitting resistance, that neighborhood, arguably the prettiest in Manhattan, with its charming streets and vibrant feel, has survived nearly intact.
Her efforts really stand as a testament to the power of bottom-up, human-centered resistance against those big imposed designs.
Of course, it's fair to say Moses wasn't purely a villain. Not all his projects are bad. He did create extensive parks, public beaches.
Made accessible by the very highways he built, ironically.
True. But the core principle Jacobs fought for remains powerful. Neighborhoods are villages and needs to remain villages. That granular, bottom-up approach where communities evolve organically usually works much better for human-scaled places than grand, imposed master plans.
It makes intuitive sense.
Absolutely. I had this experience recently, stuck in just awful traffic in London. The speed of travel there is apparently no faster, maybe even slower, than it was a century and a half ago.
Really?
It took me almost 2 hours to cross London. And for a fleeting second, stuck there, I actually wondered if Haussmann had been right. You know? Wouldn't London be better with those wide, straight arteries?
The traffic got to you.
It did. But then you realize the deeper truth. If there was so much traffic in London compared to other cities, it was precisely because people wanted to be there.
Their desire to be in that vibrant, sometimes chaotic place exceeded the cost of being stuck in traffic.
Exactly. Think about London's incredible diversity. Over a third of its residents are foreign-born. Tons of high-net-worth individuals choose to live there.
So maybe the lack of those huge Haussmann-style projects, the absence of these large revenues and the absence of dominating state dictating its growth,
is paradoxically part of its appeal. Nobody rushes to buy property in Brasilia, do they? A perfectly top-down city, built from scratch, efficient on paper, but lacking that soul.
And there's evidence for this in Paris too, right?
Yes. The source notes that the most expensive neighborhoods in Paris today were the ones that had been left alone by the 19th century renovators, the ones Haussmann didn't bulldoze.
Wow. That really underscores the enduring value of natural, organic growth over imposed, rationalized design.
It really does. And this leads to a powerful argument against what's called teleological design, designing something with a fixed, predetermined end goal, as if a building is finished once it's built.
Because the reality is different.
Completely. Even after they're built, buildings keep incurring mutations as if they needed us to slowly evolve and be taken over by a dynamic environment. They change their colors, shape, windows, and characters over time, adapting.
Stuart Brand wrote about this, didn't he? In How Buildings Learn.
Yes, a seminal book. He shows with pictures how buildings literally change through time as if they needed a metamorphose into unrecognizable shapes.
The irony being that buildings, when erected, do not account for the optionality of future alterations. They're designed as static things.
Yet in practice, they're anything but. They're living, breathing entities that adapt and mutate with time and the people using them.
Now, it's important to say our skepticism about architectural modernism isn't, like, absolute, is it?
No, not unconditional. While a lot of it can feel sterile or stressful, some elements do represent a certain improvement.
Like floor-to-ceiling windows, maybe.
Exactly. Floor-to-ceiling windows in a rural environment can be a significant positive. Why? Because they expose us to nature, creating this direct, unmediated connection. They make the technology literally invisible.
Whereas in the past, the size of windows was limited by practical concerns.
Right. Size of windows was dictated by thermal consideration because insulation was so basic, heat just poured out through large panes.
But today's materials allow us to avoid such constraints. And this is key. Modern tech, used thoughtfully, can actually help us merge with nature, move back from the smooth stone to the rich fractal.
It lets us overcome past limits, reestablish a connection that was once constrained by physics.
Oswald Spengler, the philosopher, observed civilizations going from plants to stone, metaphorically, from organic fractal forms to rigid Euclidean city structures.
But modern tech can actually revert that. Mandelbrot, the fractal guy, crafted fractal aesthetics in his own home, often sitting right in front of a window looking out at trees.
Instead of a tiny, drafty window.
The entire wall can be transparent, giving you this immersive experience facing a forest or garden. That's where technology enhances our experience of nature's fractal beauty, rather than detracting from it.
So we've gone from gadgets to cities. Now let's zoom in on something seemingly simpler, but really fundamental in measurement. How we measure the world, and maybe even knowledge itself.
Right. And the first point here is metrification, a prime example of the new mania of states.
Metrification, the big push to adopt the metric system everywhere. Logically, it makes impeccable sense on paper, right? Efficiency, standardization.
Absolutely. And it came out of that optimistic, utopian mood of the French Revolution, along with other naively rational matters like renaming months or trying decimal time, thankfully. Those failed.
An era that truly believed humanity could just invent and impose a perfectly rational order on everything.
But despite that elegant logic, there have been these repeated failures for the metric system to fully replace older systems, like in the US and the UK.
It even struggles elsewhere.
Yeah, like in Greece in 1832, peasants stubbornly stuck to Ottoman standard instead of the new metric system because it felt completely unnatural to them. It just didn't connect with their daily lives, their intuition.
Why is that? Why the resistance?
Because, unlike the metric system, which can feel a bit arbitrary in its base 10 uniformity, many naturally born weights and measures feet, miles, pounds, inches, furlongs, stone, they have this remarkable, almost built-in intuition.
You can use them with minimum expenditure of cognitive effort.
Exactly. Because they have some physical correspondence to the everyday, a direct link to the human body or natural experience.
Give some examples.
Okay. A meter does not match anything. You can easily intuit. But a foot does. You can literally visualize it, pace it out. 30 feet means something tangible.
Okay.
A mile comes from the Latin milia passum, 1,000 cases, a very human scale. A stone is 14 pounds, well, it's a stone, a tangible weight. An inch is roughly a thumb's width.
A furlong.
From agriculture, literally the distance one can plow before running out of breath. A pound, from Libra, is what you can imagine holding in your hands.
Even words like shekel in the Semitic languages mean weight, right? A physical thing.
Precisely. These units grew organically from human experience, not abstract math. They're embodied.
And yet it's regrettable, as our source says, that European Union officials might still be pushing the efficiency of the metric system deep into the countryside.
Effectively turning science into journalism, imposing this top-down rationality that ignores the intuitive wisdom embedded in older human-scaled systems, prioritizing abstract ideals over practical, lived knowledge.
This whole idea of what endures, what lasts, is captured brilliantly by something called the Lindy effect, isn't it?
Yes. It's such a powerful filtering tool, a heuristic for information, and anything non-perishable, really. The core idea is simple. What does not stand the test of time is inherently fragile.
And conversely, the best predictor of future longevity isn't how new something is or how much buzz it has.
But its current age, the longer something non-perishable has already survived, the longer it's likely to keep surviving.
So if you apply this Lindy effect heuristic to, say, books or academic papers,
it gives you a pretty simple, almost brutal rule of thumb. Books that are 1 year old are usually not worth reading, regardless of the hype.
ouch. But if a book has been around for 10 years,
It will likely be around for 10 more. If it survived 2 millennia, you can bet it'll be around for quite a bit of time, longer, maybe even another 2 millennia.
Time acts as the ultimate quality filter, sorting the noise from the signal.
Exactly. It systematically dissipates the noise and validates what's truly robust and valuable over the long haul.
Which brings us to a pretty stark, maybe uncomfortable critique of modern academia and what our source calls scientific noise.
Yeah. The argument is that much of modern academic practice, especially with its attention-seeking orientation and the intense pressure to publish constantly,
It's hardly different from journalism. It's highly susceptible to that same new mania we've been talking about.
leading to hundreds of thousands of papers that are just noise. Despite the initial hype or claims of being breakthroughs, it becomes a race for novelty over enduring insight.
And the real challenge is that time, and only time, can dissipate the opacity around whether a new result is a genuine breakthrough or just noise, a passing fad.
There's a great example, Judah Folkman's work on curing cancer by cutting off the blood supply to tumors' neovascularization.
Huge excitement around that, right?
Mhm.
Big headlines, lots of funding.
Massive excitement. But about a decade and a half later, the only significant result that really came out of that specific line of work was found completely outside cancer,
Yeah.
in the mitigation of macular degeneration. Still valuable, obviously, but the original breakthrough hope for cancer didn't pan out that way. Time revealed its true, more limited application.
And some organizations actually make this worse by ranking hottest papers and things like that.
Yeah, turning science into cheap spectatorship, fostering this competitive short-term environment. And this new mania also infects how we recognize scientists, especially with all the prizes for promising scientists under 40.
That disease, as the source calls it, has spread to economics, math, finance.
And the provocative claim is that these prizes are often the best reverse indicator of value. Like being on the cover of a big business magazine often signals a company is about to underperform. They highlight temporary buzz, not lasting contribution.
Why? How do they harm things?
Well, by focusing on early career hype, they ironically penalize those who don't get them and actually depace the field by turning it into athletic competition instead of a collaborative search for truth.
So if we are going to have prizes,
They should be for the over 100, for work that has demonstrably stood the test of time. Think about Jules Renat.
who was he?
He discovered optionality, mapped it mathematically, but it took close to 140 years to validate his contribution, for its significance to be truly appreciated. His work stayed obscure all this time.
Wow. So true breakthroughs often aren't recognized immediately by the crowd.
Rarely. They're validated by the slow, patient filter of time.
You can even test this theory yourself, right? Compare an old textbook to recent conference papers.
Exactly. Take any basic textbook you read in high school or college, physics, history, whatever. It might seem a bit dry, but the core info is probably still relevant, foundational.
Okay, now compare that to the proceedings of some random academic conference on the same topic from, say, 5 years ago.
Odds are it will feel no different from a 5-year-old newspaper, maybe even less interesting. The signal-to-noise ratio is just incredibly low.
Which suggests that maybe attending breakthrough conferences might be, statistically speaking, as much as a waste of time as buying a mediocre lottery ticket.
It's a provocative thought, but it highlights the issue of noise. In fact, the source goes even further, suggesting that even the conversation of a high school teacher or that of an unsuccessful college professor is likely to be more worthwhile than the latest academic paper.
Why? Because they're less corrupted with new mania.
Precisely. They're often driven by a genuine love of the subject, not the pressure to publish or grab attention. My best chats about philosophy have been with French philosophy teachers who just love it, but aren't trying to build a career writing papers.
Amateurs in any discipline are the best. Those who love it for its own sake.
Yes, those who pursue knowledge for the sheer joy of understanding without the external pressures of career or status. Because, and this is a really radical comparison from the source,
One.
career professions are to knowledge what prostitution is to love.
Whoa. That's strong. What's the point there?
The idea is that when the pursuit of knowledge becomes purely transactional, driven by external rewards recognition, money, promotions, rather than genuine internal passion, the very essence of that pursuit gets distorted. The quality can be compromised.
So while conversations with top scientists can be amazing,
Those truly untainted by this professional pneumania are, sadly, currently too rare.
there's a story about one of your students that illustrates this.
Yes. A student majoring in economics asked me for a simple rule. what should I read to really understand things? And I kind of blurted out, maybe a bit irritably.
What did you say?
Read as little as feasible from the last 20 years, except history books that are not about the last 50 years.
That sounds completely impractical.
It does. But for a while, the student took it seriously, like a challenge. He basically detoxified himself from the constant fire hose of new information.
And instead,
He developed a culture in original text. He went back and read Adam Smith, Karl Marx, Hayek directly, the foundational stuff.
and what did he realize from doing that?
He realized that all his peers do is read timely material that become instantly obsolete. While he, on the other hand, was building a foundation with texts he believed he'd still find relevant, still cite, still learn from when he was 80 years old.
That's profound. True knowledge isn't in the latest fad, the hot new paper, but in what has demonstrably stood the test of time.
Proving its resilience and relevance through decades, centuries even, of human engagement.
This journey into enduring knowledge, the wisdom of ages, it leads us perfectly into our final, maybe most profound section, the profound purpose of prophecy and lasting truths.
And we start here by challenging a really common misunderstanding. The true role of the prophet. It's not really about predicting the future.
Right. The job of forecasting is rather limited to seers or the variety of people involved in divinations, such as astrologists. And those activities are often dismissed, even forbidden, by ancient religious texts as unreliable, maybe even dangerous.
The classical role of the prophet, especially in the Levantine sense, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, is not to look into the future in that predictive way at all.
So what is their role then?
Their real profound role is to talk about the present, to give this incisive, often uncomfortable diagnosis of what's happening now, and to tell people what to do, or often more robustly, what not to do.
Their main job is protection.
Protection of the monotheism from its idolatry and pagan enemies that may bring calamities on the people. A prophet is someone who is in communication with the unique God and issues warning to his subjects, urging them back to the right path to avoid disaster.
In the word itself, Nevi, in Semitic languages.
It means spokesman, someone who speaks for another. And the Arabic nab means news, like a bearer of crucial information. It's different from a rasul, a messenger who brings a whole new foundational message. The prophet applies timeless wisdom to current realities.
And crucially, this job, being a Levantine prophet, was emphatically not particularly desirable.
Not at all. Acceptance was rare. Persecution was often the norm. As Jesus himself said, no one becomes a prophet in his own land.
Think about Jeremiah. His life was filled with Jeremiads, those constant, unpleasant warnings about destruction and captivity because of the people's actions.
Yeah, that did not make him particularly popular. He was the absolute personification of the notion of shoot the messenger.
He wasn't just unpopular, he was actively attacked.
Oh, yes. Beaten, punished, and persecuted. He was the victim of numerous plots which involved his own brothers, and some accounts even say he was possibly stoned to death in Egypt.
Wow. And we see echoes of this in Greek tradition too, right?
Definitely. Cassandra, blessed with the gift of prophecy, but cursed so that no one believed her. Tiresias, the blind prophet, blinded for revealing secrets, but gained the consolation of understanding the secrets of the songs of bird.
It's this recurring tragic theme across cultures. Those who offer uncomfortable truths, who warn about present dangers, are often met with disbelief, hostility, even violence.
Which leads to this really puzzling paradox, the lack of recursion in learning. Or maybe, better put, a fundamental lack of second-order thinking in society. Meaning, if history shows that people delivering messages deemed valuable for the long term have been persecuted in the past, you'd logically expect some kind of correcting mechanism to emerge. Intelligent people should learn from history, right?
So when they encounter new, maybe difficult but valuable messages, they'd greet them with more understanding, more openness.
You'd think so. But as our source laments, nothing of that sort takes place. We just seem doomed to repeat the same mistakes, dismissing crucial warnings time and again.
And this lack of recursive thinking also applies to how we understand innovation.
Strikingly so. If you truly believe that what will work and do well is going to be a new idea that others did not think of, then logically you should develop a clearer eye for new ideas without too much reference to the perception of others. You'd value genuine originality above all.
But that's not what usually happens.
No. Often, something deemed original tends to be modeled on something that was new at that time but no longer new now. It's derivative originality.
Like for many scientists, being an Einstein means solving a similar problem to the one Einstein solved. building on his work, maybe.
Exactly. But Einstein himself was not solving a standard problem at all. He was completely reframing reality, creating a whole new paradigm. The very idea of being an Einstein, in the sense of following his path, isn't truly original anymore.
And this same error shows up in risk management, too, a kind of dangerous blind spot.
Profoundly. People only consider risky things that I have heard them in the past, focusing only on historical precedents, things that have already happened.
They fail to realize that before those catastrophes occurred, they were completely without precedence, totally unforeseen, escaping standards.
Right. And efforts to get people to consider second-order considerations, the risks of the unknown unknowns, or to account for fragility in systems have largely failed.
We keep preparing meticulously for the last crisis, analyzing what went wrong.
But remain largely unprepared for the next unprecedented one, because our minds are stuck looking backward.
So how do we break out of this? How do we recognize what truly endures, what's truly valuable?
Well, there's a beautiful, maybe apocryphal, story from Aristotle about Empedocles, the pre-Socratic philosopher.
Okay.
He was asked a simple question. Why does a dog always sleep in the exact same spot, on the same floor tile?
Odd question. What was his answer?
His profound answer was, there had to be some likeliness between the dog and the tile. It wasn't random.
A likeliness. Meaning what?
Meaning a natural, biological, explainable, and non-explainable match confirmed by long series of recurrent frequentation. A quiet, persistent affinity, a deep resonance that only revealed itself over time and repeated use.
The Empedoclean dog tile. That simple fable holds a really profound conclusion for us, doesn't it?
It really does. Those human technologies, those endeavors that have survived, like the tile of the dog, fundamental things like writing and reading, which have lasted millennia.
They are a match between natural friends. They persist because they correspond to something deep in our nature. They resonate with us fundamentally, beyond just immediate usefulness or trends.
They're not just tools. They become extensions of who we are, a natural fit.
And this means that ultimately, reality cared not upon opinions and narratives.
Great.
What's truly robust, what endures, isn't swayed by popular consensus or clever arguments or fashionable theories.
No. There are secrets to our world that only practice can reveal, and no opinion analysis will ever capture in full. These secret properties, these hidden harmonies between things,
Are revealed through time, and thankfully only through time. They prove their worth by persisting, not by being popular or intellectually trendy.
so we can take this Empedoclean dog idea and apply it as a powerful heuristic in our own lives.
Now,
If something makes no sense to you, maybe a deeply held religious practice if you're an atheist, or some age-old habit or practice called irrational by modern logic,
okay.
but it has been around for a very, very long time, then irrational or not, you can expect it to stick around much longer and outlive those who culture his demise.
Wow. That highlights the deep, quiet wisdom in just observing what persists, what endures, even when we don't fully understand why.
It suggests an underlying fitness, a harmony with human nature or reality that transcends our immediate rational grasp.
So what a journey we've been on. From the relentless, often frustrating push for tech upgrades.
To observing the enduring, complex qualities of classical architecture and organically grown cities.
Questioning the superficial wisdom behind modern measurements.
And sifting through all the noise of contemporary knowledge to find what truly stands the test of time.
We've seen again and again that often it's the oldest ideas, the oldest objects, the things filtered by centuries of human experience.
That hold the most resilience, offer the deepest satisfaction, and provide the most profound insights. It's a fascinating counter-narrative to our modern obsession with the new.
So what does this deep dive mean for you, listening right now?
Well, perhaps it's an invitation to look beyond the shiny new thing, maybe resist that incessant pull of neuromania just a little.
And instead, maybe appreciate the quiet endurance of the artisanal, the subtly anti-fragile.
Exactly. Maybe seek out knowledge and wisdom that's been filtered by centuries, not just the latest headlines or academic fads.
And recognize the inherent profound value in what simply lasts, even if its utility isn't immediately obvious on the surface.
Ultimately, maybe it's about finding a deeper sense of peace and satisfaction, not in constant acquisition and endless upgrading.
But in enduring connection. In the quiet wisdom of things that persist.
So as you go about your day today, maybe consider this. What are your Empedoclean tiles?
What are the things, the habits, the ideas, maybe even the relationships in your life that, despite all the noise and novelty and pressure to change, you intuitively know are here to stay.
And what does their quiet persistence, their profound durability reveal about what truly matters to you?